Heather Raftery. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back, yes.
Yeah. Are you really into that genealogy stuff? You were just telling me all about your last name.
Well, I'm not personally, but my mom really is.
Oh, okay.
And so,
see, that's my situation too. My mom is super into it.
very big into it.
I bought her the Ancestry DNA thing.
Yeah.
And then she bought one for me.
Oh,
I haven't done mine just yet, but I'm going to.
I'm curious to try mine. I guess my aunts on my dad's side had did theirs, and had very interesting results because we are both sides of my family have very mixed genealogy, and so there's some bastards there and some clandestine marriages.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking people who are lying about being people's parents, it's time to either come clean or else you're going to be sweating. Because we all have access to genealogy tests now. Like, we're going to find out what you're lying about.
For sure.
It's an interesting time that you can access that straight from your home. Mm-hmm. Well, we're in Tucson. And you've been on the podcast before a while back at the start of it was really early on in the whole COVID pandemic.
It was. I'm trying to remember when it was.
I think it was April because that was when we were back in Tucson.
Okay, yeah.
So, April 2020 is a pretty infamous time period. It's funny, Andrew's working on her documentary right now about our first year on the road. She's got a scene where we're talking about the pandemic, and I'm like, this needs to say March 2020. Like, something about March 2020 will always give people that context now.
Oh, for
It's going to be like whenever you think of certain dates. And I'm like, as we're talking and we sound kind of stupid about what this is because we have no idea, that's going to be really important to put on there.
Well, pre-COVID, post-COVID,
Yeah.
That's a defining moment.
But we're not even post-COVID yet,
Well, yes.
We're still in it, but it feels like we're post in some ways. And I guess it depends on your demographic, whether or not you're kind of post or not. Mm-hmm. Especially, I think the big thing is, everybody wondering, what the risk is for them. So I've talked about this in the podcast a lot of times, but it's the risk for people like us that are young and healthy and all these things is probably fairly low in terms of a massive, this could kill us or not.
Right.
But man, back when we last talked, we didn't know.
Nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
Yeah, right. Nobody knew how this was being transmitted. We were just taking shots in the dark. And, I think that's what created that whole culture of fear, which led to, toilet paper shortages and everything, because we didn't know if it was going to be just a mass apocalypse. Yeah. Really.
We had no idea. So, I took the podcast remote for a month or two there. I hated that. I hated remote episodes. I still got to meet very cool people, and the people who did remote episodes, don't get me wrong, I had a fun time talking to you all. But there's such a huge difference between just being here and talking. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to our episode this morning to remind myself what we talked about. And we also had this lag that was 5 or 6 seconds. And so by the end of the episode,
that was my Wi-Fi.
No, but it's okay though. I mean, because we made it work. We did a thing where basically each of us would just talk for a bit longer, and then you'd stop and you'd wait, and then you'd let the other person talk. But it's such not the format of any podcast I've ever done or tried to do. I actually got it way better too. After our episode, I was like, I'm never gonna let that happen again. So since then, if I'm doing a remote one and we have some sort of lag, we just call, and I've found a way to have them record locally and me, so it works a lot better. But it's kind of painful to listen to.
Oh, I bet.
Struggle.
Well, aside from the lag, just the nonverbal cues that you get when you're talking to someone one-on-one, you just can't replicate that. Even phone calls, I hate calling people on the phone. I'm notorious. People will call in and then they'll send a text and then I'll text them back. But I love interpersonal interactions, and all of those cues you miss. And that's why I'm worried quite a bit about these younger generations is, even before COVID, is they're lacking a lot of that in-person interaction and learning those cues. And learning, recognizing, what somebody's face means. If I'm pissed off, you'll probably notice it in my eyes before I actually say something.
Yeah, it's I'm a big believer in nuance as a thing, and there's so much context and so much intent that you take from communicating with someone in person that you don't get from the furthest removed. So like the two polar opposites would be a 3-hour podcast versus a tweet. Like these are these we couldn't be more different in terms of two things, because one is like an in-depth conversation with two people who aren't distracted, talking with each other, and even like the headphones, you're like locked in, you're having this moment together. And then the other side is like this half communication with no nuance, the most processed you can make it, as quick as you can do it, the hottest take possible. And for me, as soon as you lose all of that nuance, you lose the intent of the speaker, which is huge. And I've said that in this podcast a million times. I don't claim to be the smartest guy in the world. I'm also not going to be mean and call myself like an idiot, which I do often. But, I'm not trying to be either. And when you listen to a podcast like this, you'll recognize that like we're just two people trying our best. No, we're not trying to be mean to anybody. We're nice people.
Right.
We're just trying. And if we say something stupid, we're still just trying.
Exactly.
But
And
if
the
I say
rest
something
of the
stupid on Twitter, it's all
podcast
gone.
the rest of the podcast will kind of, illustrate that character a little bit more. So if I do say something stupid, it's probably in good faith because of the rest of what I said.
Right.
Whereas a tweet or a
tweet.
tweet. Obviously, I'm not on Twitter. But there's, like you said, there's lack of context, and for the most part, I see a lot of people, just attack these posts without really understanding anything about the person, anything about what they previously posted, and it just drives me nuts.
Well, I think it's also kind of our own responsibility to surround ourselves in context and nuance.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like you're either going to engage in it or you're not. You're either going to put out that tweet and recognize how someone can misinterpret it, or you're going to do a more responsible thing, like provide some context and intent to what you're saying.
Sure.
And I feel like I always used to think of like wrapping myself in nuance as like a safety blanket, like, oh, like no one can be mean to me now. But I think I've come to realize that that's not what it is. I think what you're really wrapping yourself in is just like the empathy of the world, like the empathy we're supposed to have towards each other. And but I think it gets attacked almost to try to like provide nuance to what you're saying. And people are like, oh, you're just trying to explain something shitty that you said. If someone gets called out or canceled for something, then they're like, no, what I meant was, and it's like, no, it's too late.
Right.
But that's the empathy we're supposed to kind of have toward each other. Like, oh, okay, well, I've made a mistake, I've learned something, whatever. Luckily, I haven't had to deal with that very much.
Oh, that's
I don't
good.
think.
Yeah.
So, but it'd be something I would so not engage with anyways. It's just like,
it is hard.
noise.
And I've been relatively free from a lot of that. Even being a black belt in the jiu-jitsu community. I'll say some things, but very rarely is it ever controversial. I try to spread peace and love and, understanding and, kind of a free spirit type of vibe when I do post stuff.
right.
And, it's been really hard not to post stuff in response to what's been happening. And so I posted something that people found, something to say about,
Right.
something to get angry about.
Right.
And, I didn't respond to them. I let them respond. I didn't even delete them. I left their messages there, and I took a breath and I was like, well, how would I respond to this being true to myself? And, I tried I messaged each and everyone who criticized my post, and I said, hey, on my post, not even like a personal or direct message. On my post, I was just very clear and said, hey, like, this is what I believe, and if you feel that strongly about it, you can just unfollow me. I have no ill will toward anyone who doesn't agree with what I believe. But like, if you find this so offensive, feel free to unfollow. I won't block you, nothing like that. And that's how I handled it. But when I first saw the messages, I was like, what? I got a little, angry, and that's just not me. Well, obviously it's me because I felt that way, but
It's not what you want to
it's
be.
not what I want to present,
Yeah.
especially over social media. And,
Yeah.
I was talking to my boyfriend about this, and, I go back and forth on whether or not to delete my Instagram and Facebook, or, maybe make it private, because my Instagram at least is public. But then I think about all of these role models that the younger generations have. And I feel like I'm a pretty PG role model. I'll throw cuss words in there and every once in a while. And, but like, for every one of me, there's 50 to 100 women of my generation showing their ass, and just to get likes. You know, I have no qualms about, you know, women being proud of their bodies and showing off their bodies, like all for it. But the motive behind it is what I question, you know, and if women are presenting this kind of hypersexualized image of themselves and that's all they present and that's all these young women see, these young girls see, and that's what they want to emulate because that's what gets likes or that's what gets, you know, money or power or fame or whatever, I have an issue with that. And so I leave my Instagram public so that at the very least, I'm out there as something different.
Yeah. A weird responsibility that you probably shouldn't have to have.
I hate
right?
it. I do.
Because you should just be able to be yourself and be like, fuck it. Fuck this online bullshit.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't want
done.
this anymore.
And then you're like, man, but what are little girls going to see now?
Yeah.
Like, they got to see a traveling black belt badass every now and then too, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that, I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's more than just sort of that online thing for you because you are at the top of your sport. You're a competitor that, you know, in a sport that is mostly dominated by men.
Yeah.
So maybe you do have some responsibility there, I guess.
And I do, and that's
You
what
know?
I grapple with, you know,
Yeah.
because I mean, even I'm a master competitor now, but I still fight in the adult divisions. And there are somebody tried to do list all of the female black belts in the U.S. at the very least, and I think it was a list of maybe 300, 400
Really?
in the entire U.S.
Yeah. Because, you know, that list gets much bigger just like for men, as you go down the belts, it gets much, much bigger.
Oh, sure.
But especially to be a woman and then to stay in that sport for that long, to make that that commitment, that's some serious stuff. You've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time,
A
too.
long time.
Yeah.
12 years.
That's awesome.
Actually, in this last January.
That's very inspirational because I'm in month 3.
Right on.
You know, I was asking Kyle before we sat down and started doing this podcast. Of course, everybody, Kyle, who also lives here, and this episode probably looks really familiar to the people watching the video version. We're on the same porch. And I was like, at what point did you feel like I don't entirely suck anymore? And he was like, probably about a year. And he's like, it was when new guys started coming into the gym. And I was like, fuck, I'm never going to have that. Like, the amount of traveling that Andrea and I do, where we'll only be in a place for like this has been long. Tucson, we've been here we're doing 2 months.
Wow.
That's long.
Uh-huh.
We really, a long for us is usually a month.
So 2/3 of your jiu-jitsu career, you've been in Tucson.
Yeah. And not a bad place to be, man. Some really, really good people here, but actually also kind of a hard place to be because I feel like 10th Planet is really competitive and the people are really, really good. And my first instructor out in Florida really told me something I think is probably true. He said the best way to learn is when you're rolling with someone who you're just a little bit better than.
Yeah.
And I think he's right because, you know, you have to be so defensive when you're rolling with people that are so much better than you. But the nice thing is there are some people here that I really have liked rolling with who just been you know, they'll allow me to try stuff.
Yeah.
I know they're letting me. I'm aware,
Sure.
but it's also a good challenge for them because it's like, all right, let me put you into like end game leg entanglement, and then you have to get out now. Like that's good for them too. I
Right.
get
And what's
that.
my response after that?
Right. And so, you know, it just depends on who you're rolling with.
Yeah.
But-
And it is, I mean, you'll go through stages where you're very selfish about your game, which is completely fine. I think to a certain extent, people have to be selfish about their own growth and like just go in there one day and just try to murk everybody, you know? But as you get up into the belts, you do, where we talked about responsibility, you do have a responsibility to help the people below you kind of come up, not only for their benefit and for the benefit of the community, but for your benefit as well. You know, if you're always crushing people and they aren't giving you a challenge, you're not growing yourself.
Right.
And so I'll go in and I'll know exactly how I'm going to play that day with whoever I'm going to roll with. It's, you know, I know which people are going to help me grow and which people I have a responsibility to help them grow, you know?
Yeah. And there were some promotions that went on at 10th Planet.
Yeah.
The day.
Really exciting.
There's a new brown belt who I assume you're close with since you were in the picture.
Pretty close with. I've known him for a long time. He actually came to us from a different academy, and he was having some problems with that other academy, which happens. I think it's the old school way of thinking is you stay with the same academy in your entire life, and that's not what I did, and that's not what I believe in. And
I need to mine your knowledge base on this a lot because it's tough.
It is, and you want to avoid the old school term is creonchi, right? A creonchi is a betrayer, somebody who leaves your academy for some other academy.
Mm-hmm.
In my cases, it was always I left town. I left to pursue other opportunities outside of jiu-jitsu, and I just had to leave that jiu-jitsu academy.
Luckily, I don't think anybody gets mad at us for traveling to the next place. They're not like, oh, fuck you, man.
Right.
Like, what am I going to do? Start like living in Tucson? Like, maybe, actually. Now that I think about it, actually, that'd be pretty dope.
Not a bad place.
Oh, if I had to pick. Andrew and I talked about it a lot. Not seriously because we're really doing this travel lifestyle.
Sure, yeah.
But we definitely talked about like if we were going to get a house at some point, it'd be here.
Tucson's
I really fell in love with
gem.
this place.
Mm.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
Creon
I just
cheese.
interrupted.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you don't want to be like that trader that
I mean,
takes off.
But on the other hand, if the academy and the group of people that you're training with, if you don't vibe with them, if your professor isn't delivering, what you need for your own personal growth, if the instructor is, in a lot of the cases for women, they feel either that they're neglected or that they're being hit on. And so if it's not a positive culture within that academy, I am all for leaving. Like, I don't care if it's a school across the street or, a school states away. If it's not working for you, it's not a cult. You don't have to stay there.
Right.
And I think that's why I have a big issue with this Creonchi idea is that if it's not working, you're free. This is America. You're free to leave.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, Anthony and I talked about this a lot on his podcast, but I think that there's something in the travel mindset that if you do extensive amounts of travel, you really start to see the sort of tribalism and where it happens.
Sure.
And you really start to dissociate from any sort of ownership or tribalism.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm never fully a part of any family out there. And that has its pros and it has its cons.
Oh, for
It can
sure.
be hard sometimes, but I think that the massive pro is that you never get sucked into that drama.
No.
Because you're like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
This
exactly.
is like, because you decide that like other things are really
Are more important.
more important than
Oh, absolutely.
the
And-
location you go to train jujitsu.
Yeah. And I feel, and I've mentioned this extensively, in my seminars and my podcasts and just with people is, the single most important thing that somebody could do to grow as a human being is to travel, experience different cultures, experience different people, and realize that, we're different, but we're all the same ultimately. And, I think that's what enables you to have a lot more love and compassion for your other people. And gosh, I think if we could instill, I know a lot of other countries have like this leap year, right? Where they go off and for a year between high school and college, they go off and go do something.
Sure.
And I wish they would have, is it leap year?
No, I'm trying to think of what it is.
What is it? It's
But you said leap year. Now that's
I know.
completely stuck
I'm
in my
sorry.
head. The people listening to a podcast when we have a brain fart like this, it's got to be the worst because they're like, it's called this.
I know. Gap year.
Gap year.
Gap year. So I wish the U.S. would have that same kind of mentality toward going to school. Instead, we're pushed directly into college.
Yeah. Well, follow the dollars, right? Follow the dollars straight from public education to like take a big loan from the government. That's what they would like you to do. Do they really want you to go like take the red pill and go wake up and see other shit? No, I don't think so.
No.
Just take out a giant loan. You'll be all right.
Yeah. That's what everybody does.
Oh, man,
You'll
what
be
a
fine.
mess. Well, I hope it's one of those silver lining things that I have about COVID, which is that hopefully like people are starting to see this because you've got universities that are charging full tuition for online classes. And you don't like you gotta at some point as a university recognize that part of the thing that these students are paying for is this massive social impact of going away for several years and meeting people and experimenting and learning things. And it's not all about what happens in the classroom.
Right.
And so to be charging full tuition for that is really starting to expose the scam pretty hard.
It does. And I think that for the good, I think there's a lot of crappy things that have come out of the COVID, but I think there has been a lot of, like you said, it's exposed some flaws in our society, and maybe, people are going to change for the better.
Yeah. There's some opportunity for it for sure right now.
I hope so.
But I think that, but the downside, of course, is that travel is much harder during a pandemic. And travel, like we were talking about, I feel like it is a massive catalyst for change on an individual level. Like, I've said this before, like, so Andrew and I, we lived in Denver for 2 years kind of on our own. We were getting
God, I love Denver.
going. I love Denver too. I know. That's the other place I could move back to outside of the winters, I guess. And the amount that we changed there during those 2 years was phenomenal. I mean, it's during that time in our life where it's like, all right, you're taking on a lot of new things and going full adult mode. And so you're going to learn a lot and change a lot. Since we got on the road, I feel like we do that every month.
Yeah.
Like, it is just like, you can't even keep up with how fast you're changing. You're just like, oh, I had just some new radical idea last month, and now I got a new one this month, and now I'm going to put that into the game. It gets kind of exhausting at a certain point for sure too.
But so invigorating at the same time.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And having somebody to travel with, that's something that I didn't have, and that would be really exciting for me, because then you can share all these memories, and so I love following some of these van lifers who are couples, and they do post about their trials and their excitements and all of these changes, but that those two people are changing at a pace that is probably double the pace that I changed at, being a solo traveler.
I can understand that. I think there's goods and bads too to traveling with a partner as well, because I think it's just like anything else. The bigger the challenge, the greater the reward. And so you have an extra challenge, which is that not only do you have to be satisfied by whatever's going on as you're traveling, but you also care that the other person is getting what they want out of that travel, out of that day. You both have to agree, like, are we done driving for today? Are we going to pull over? Or do you want to stay at a park? Or do you want to stay here? Or should we go there? So for every ounce of extra challenge there's extra reward if you meet it. But I think you're right. I mean, sharing the memories, because my memory in general is just complete shit. And so, but not only do I have that, but I also have a wife who's a photographer and videographer, and now we do the vlog, and she's making a documentary about our first year. And so I get to rewatch and revisit all of that all the time. Which is just great.
In a very awesome, creative way.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, and of course, we primarily capture the good moments, and so I get to forget the bad moments. And when we look back, it's like, oh, it was all sparkles and rainbows, wasn't it? Which can be a good thing sometimes, because we're so inclined to react. It's that thing where it's. I always forget what it is, but something about how our body's reaction to poison is somehow 10 times stronger than, like, we'll remember poison 10 times more than we'll remember something that was good for us, right? Yeah. So when you only record the good shit, then you're sort of helping that equation balance out, But sometimes we talk about hard stuff too.
Reel.
Oh, there's absolutely a bloopers reel. Yeah. Yeah, no, there definitely is. And there's like times where we'll set up a camera and then, like, we're married, we fight, like, we're having a fight.
Yeah.
What are we recording right now? How are we supposed to do this? Your cat's about to make a break for it. Is that all right?
She's fine. She'll explore.
It's the cutest kitten ever.
She is awesome.
She came right up to me when I showed up, and I didn't even see her, but she popped up on a chair next to me, and she just, like, put her paw on me. It was like, hey.
Well, you're probably standing next to the treats.
Oh, was I? Oh, that makes sense. Well, still, I've never had a cat come up and greet me ever in my life.
Well, she's had Guinness as her only role model, mostly her only role model.
Yeah.
I have 2 cats, but Fleas has only just now started accepting her as a little sister.
Oh, good. Okay.
And so her only other role model is Kyle's dog, Guinness. And so she acts more dog than she does cat.
Yeah, that dog is the best. That dog is super cool.
Amazing. I've never had a dog quite like him, and this is his second kitten in the household, And he's just been perfect with each one. And he's never lived with cats before. And,
Yeah.
it's just, and he's just cool. And,
Yeah.
he'll bark after the doorbell is ring.
Right.
And he'll bark, after they've entered the house. So he's like, has a 60-40% success rate as far as keeping the house secure.
Still got that territory instinct. They all have to have some of that. Are they really a dog if they like let go of that instinct?
Right.
No, Kyle came out and we were shooting bows one day, and he brought Guinness just in his SUV or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a cool day, so there was no worries about dogs overheating everybody.
Yeah.
But and the windows were cracked. But I was like, are we just good we can just go, shoot these bows? And he's like, yeah, he'll be fine in there. He was chill. And he didn't do a thing. And we got back. It's not like he was going crazy either.
No.
He was just like, hey guys.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't see that very often. But I think pets really reflect their owners.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's you learn a lot about someone if it's like, oh, sorry, my dog's really anxious. It's like, oh, are
absolutely.
they? They're real stressed out, are they?
Yeah.
It's just, what's the environment then? That's so funny. Well, I love that. I love about this podcast that I never know where we're going to go.
No. Yeah.
Now we're just talking about dogs.
I know.
I got bit by a dog for the first time this year.
Did you?
Which was a new experience.
Was it a strange dog or was it a
no,
guest dog?
we were staying on a friend's farm, and this dog's a little bit kooky.
Yeah.
And I was going for a run on their property.
Uh-huh.
I came back from my run. He saw me. He knew me already. He
Yeah.
came up to me. I petted him. I was like, hey, we talked.
Uh-huh.
And then as soon as I kind of walked on to keep going on my run, he got a little upset that I was walking away from him, and he just nipped me behind my leg.
Oh, shoot. What breed of dog was it?
It's a lab.
Oh, a lab.
I know. But he's old and a little messed up. So
I would have guessed something like that from like a Queensland Blue Heeler or, some sort
sure.
of
I mean, he was definitely
sheepdog.
trying to herd me because he wasn't, it's not like he was trying to rip my leg off.
No.
It was just a little,
Like, you're going the wrong direction.
But it's still scary. I mean, it still was new to me. And, when I'm like, I think running is one of those ones where if you're a runner, you just expect it. Just
Mm-hmm.
expect that you're going to run by somebody's farm and somebody's dog is going to just come at you.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not that much of a runner, so I've never...
My dad and I ran a lot when I was growing up,
Yeah.
and it was almost always a thing, or even if you're on a bike sometimes, because we lived out in the country, and so
Sure.
you go by someone's property on a country
they
road.
never had their dogs behind a fence.
They're used to
or
cars
anything.
going by, but they're
Mhm.
not used to a bicyclist or
Yeah.
a runner going by, and so they'll come up and investigate you. So I had never been bit before, luckily, but
Yeah.
but it wasn't a big deal. I think it was a good thing. I think, and I still have a little scar from it.
Oh.
I have a theory
it
about
broke
scars.
skin.
Yeah.
Oh.
But just a little. It wasn't
Yeah.
a big deal. But I have a theory about scars. You tell me what you think about this. I have, like anyone else, I've got scars all over my body from various things.
Uh-huh.
And I love all of them. I'm like, this is a great story,
Yeah.
But I don't have any tattoos. And I'm like, that's
Oh.
a scar that you pick. Wouldn't
That is a
wouldn't I
scar
love
you
that
pick.
even more? Where are you at in the tattoo
Oh.
world? Do you have any tattoos?
Yeah. I have 4.
Do you?
That's interesting.
But I feel like I would actually really like that because
Yeah.
it's just a scar you got to pick. It's a scar that looks nice and
Right.
is art, and you
it's
have a memory with it.
especially if you have a, I know there's quite a few people who just randomly pick out of a book. But if you have, a tattoo you've been thinking about for a long time and it is related to a story or it is related to an experience or a relationship or what have you, I think that's a beautiful thing, for me.
Yeah.
Is it regardless of what happens later in life, if that relationship no longer exists or I'm no longer, a lot of mine are jiu-jitsu related.
Mhm.
If it's no longer a part of my life or for some reason or another, that was a part of my life and I have it documented on my skin.
Right.
Which is, I love that idea.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I was against it, because for one, my sister was the first to get tattoos in our family, which caused a huge ruckus
Sure.
with my parents. They're like, "You're gonna have this forever." It's like,
Right.
yes.
Right.
But then I got my first tattoo, and my idea of it changed. I thought it was, I was like, oh, that's, I'm gonna have it, and then I'm not gonna like it in 2 years.
Hmm.
But then when I got it, I realized, okay, well, this is permanent. This is on my skin, but this is part of who I am. I picked wisely. I thought about my tattoos, and I picked each one to be comfortable with the fact that it's gonna be on my body forever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. the scary thing is the other half of that too, though, which is like I said, I was listening to our episode as I was driving out here, and I was like, why did I say that stuff?
Yeah.
Like, it was only, I don't know.
What did you say? Which part were you?
No, just anything I would say, or like how I would talk about a certain thing, and I'm like, wow, I'm an entirely different person now. Like, I know so much more about this thing or whatever it is, or like, man, I've changed the direction of this podcast too. You know, the podcast has evolved massively. It's a totally different thing, and so if I don't like something from that recent, you know, and I'm like totally embarrassed about something that recent, or even, you know, make me go listen to an episode from like last week, and I'll be like, why did I even say that? You know, and then you pick a tattoo and you're like, why did I get that like a week later? That's what I would be so terrified of.
Well, I mean, it's a legitimate fear, but I think my limit is if I keep thinking about it for a year, then I'll probably get it.
That's a good way to go about it. In fact, that's sort of similar to like the minimalist way of having things or not, right? Is like there's a certain time period, and it's if I didn't use that, I don't probably need it. That's how I feel like that's how Andrew and I got rid of all of our stuff to move into the RV.
Yeah.
It was sort of like,
how much stuff did you get rid of? Like a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, a lot. We only lived in that little apartment for 2 years, and the amount of stuff we accrued was insane. And then you think of like outside of furniture. So we got rid of all the furniture, even the mattresses, you know, the couch, the dresser, everything. And then I got rid of half of my kitchen stuff, and I cook like crazy.
Oh yeah.
So that was really, really hard. I mean, I cook now on two different. I have 2 cast iron pans. I have a big pot that I can make like kombucha in and like pizza sauce and big things, and a small pot that I can boil things in. That's it. And I don't have any nonstick frying pans anymore. I don't have anything. That was the hardest part, but the books were also really hard because I had about 200 books I had to get rid of.
Yeah.
Wow. And so now we've got about 10 that I just am like, I can't. These 10, no fucking way.
Yeah.
And I've got the Kindle that has, you know, as many as I want.
Right.
But
I recently got rid of a bunch of books. Actually.
Doesn't it hurt?
It hurt, but then I reflected and I was like, I haven't cracked these books open in 5 years. You know, just hauling these around wherever I went. Even in the bus, I had a box of books, and I would maybe read 1 or 2, you know, at any time. And a lot of them were textbooks that I had from college.
Sure.
So I'd been hanging on to them even longer. But they were at my parents' house. And so when I moved in here, my mom was like, take your shit.
Well, yeah,
get it out of here.
You spend so much on textbooks that you're like, how can I get rid of that? I spent like $200 on that.
Maybe I might want to like crack it open. And I remembered something and I need to clarify. And that never happened.
I know. It's funny though. You know what? Now it's easier. It's easier to not have books, and I became a real audiobook fiend, and so I do most of my books that way.
Oh yeah, I haven't gotten on that train yet.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually just talking to a friend here in Tucson the other day about how, just like how some people are like, oh, I'm all into audiobooks, and they claim to read, but they don't really like. That's not really reading. So I try to pick. Like, if I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm going to be doing something where I can be engaged in it. So I love them for riding on the motorcycle. I've got a Bluetooth.
Okay, so that I do audiobooks.
Like when you're driving.
When I'm driving.
Yeah.
Long distances.
Yeah.
But any other time, no.
Yeah. I'll do it when I'm cooking, too.
Yeah.
Because I'll cook for a solid 2 hours a day.
Oh, okay.
I mean, when I say I cook, Andrew and I only eat stuff I cook. Like, that's almost exclusive. So I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
And...
Do you meal prep a little bit? Do you have like...
No.
What's the size of your refrigerator in there?
It's a full residential fridge.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, in the new one that we just got into.
Yeah.
So before that, we had an RV fridge, and we had to get groceries about every 4 days or so. Now it's the residential fridge, so once a week we just have to get groceries.
Nice.
And it does fine. Yeah. But then I bake. Mostly my time is spent baking because I do sourdough. So
I'm really excited to try your sourdough.
Yeah, I know. Oh, shoot. I should have brought cookies for you guys. I made peanut butter sourdough cookies yesterday.
Whatever you have,
good.
just bring it.
I brought a loaf for people who don't know. We're about to make some. I think Kyle's going to make some steaks, which I think eats a steak every single day probably. I had to guess.
He does. There is no guessing to that. He does.
Yeah.
He's on the carnivore diet, and so.
Does he cook them all inside?
No.
Yeah,
right
that's
grill.
better
Yeah.
because you can't do steaks inside.
No, we have another roommate, and he sometimes will cook steaks on inside, and then there's splatter everywhere, and sometimes he
Smoke
sets the
everywhere.
alarm off.
Yeah, I set off our smoke alarm pretty regularly
Yeah.
too. But the new RV. Kyle got to come over and see it. It's got an outdoor kitchen on it, so it's got a grill attached right on the
Oh,
outside. It's even got a
sweet.
little outdoor mini fridge on it. East to West Alta, everybody. I'm a brand ambassador of some
Yeah.
sort. Yeah, no, we like East to West, and they put us in their new Alta rig, and it's
Yeah.
it's phenomenal.
Oh man, that
Um,
is like some Gucci van life right there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think at some point there's some talk of us doing a van thing
Mm-hmm.
in the future. I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but there's talk. Of course there's talk. That's
Yeah.
not giving anything away. But I'm very nervous about it.
Yeah.
I love that we have this trailer that feels like an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel like a normal person. I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm just kind of getting by all the time.
Right.
And then we can go park that trailer, unhitch it,
Yeah.
take the truck, and have a normal car. Like I have the truck here today.
Mhm.
I looked like it was going to rain. And then I've got my motorcycle that sits in the back of the truck, so I
Yeah.
can ride that whenever I want.
Oh,
We've got two
perfect.
vehicles. I don't
Yeah.
know. I like that lifestyle a
Mhm.
lot. It suits me. I'm very nervous with the van.
Yeah. The vans, it's interesting for sure because that's what you drive every day, everywhere.
Yeah. How do you make it work for cooking?
When I was living in it, I had a little propane stove.
Hmm.
And then I had it's not a Yeti, it's the Yeti knockoff. Actually, it's right here. Whatever that is.
Just a
Arctic.
giant cooler.
The Arctic cooler, and
Uh-huh.
so I would go grocery shopping about every other day,
Uh-huh.
and I would boil water and cook little things on my my propane stove,
Uh-huh.
and with the windows open always because it's just such a small space.
Yeah.
And I ate a lot of fresh fruits and fresh vegetables and
Mhm.
salads and things like that I didn't have to cook every day. And
Right.
if I needed to clean the pot, I would go to whatever restroom I had, throw the pot in my backpack and clean it in the sink there.
Yeah. It's that kind of stuff that people don't realize it adds up though.
It
Like your
does.
time spent doing those little things. Because there's so much. This is a great thing about traveling. It reminds you how much time you actually need to spend like living, just living. Life
Mhm.
should probably take time. Like we should all take our time to make this dinner or
Yeah.
set this thing up, in our own space. And it's okay that you do it every single day. And I feel
Mhm.
like so many kind of like living hacks are just about like cutting out those repetitive motions
Yeah.
that and I wonder what's left. And I think that the ideal of all of that is that what you're left with is like I wake up, everything's done for me by someone
Mhm.
else, and then I work as long as I can possibly work, and then I come home and I do one recreational activity, and then I go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I just feel like
Rinse and repeat.
it's the same thing as we were talking about earlier. It's the nuance of life. Is
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, but then I've gotta cook this thing. I've got to get this ready for tomorrow. I've
Mhm.
got to put this. I got to go do these dishes over here.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's the beauty. If you skip that, then you just become kind of too
So
robotic.
true. And even just the cooking element alone, I just in the last few years have gotten involved in really preparing things, and I enjoy cooking now. I didn't before, but thinking about, oh, what am I gonna have this week? What am I gonna make? What am I gonna meal prep? I did this 2 weeks ago. I really enjoyed it. I want to try this recipe here.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, even whatever is happening during the day or during the week, and I'm excited about doing this, and I'm entirely focused on doing this and,
Right.
and being present in the moment of making that thing because that's what I chose and that's
Mhm.
what I'm going to eat this week. Whereas when you make the decision to go out and your only decision is, do I want this or do I want that? And somebody makes it for you and,
Yeah.
and you're not involved or invested in the preparation of it. And so it's given just little thought.
Yeah.
And so the cooking, I mean, even van lifing when you're van lifing takes it to that next level, and because you have to think, okay, is this gonna last?
Mhm.
How
Yeah.
am I gonna save this? Is this just a one-time meal?
And eating is such an emotional thing for
Mhm.
humans. And I feel like cooking, well, I feel like there's two ways that eating can be romantic. When you're eating with a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So you're either at a restaurant, which means you have delegated everything else out to other people
Yeah.
and you just get to focus on each other.
Right.
And that's one version of romance. I
Mhm.
think we all experience that because from our first dates as high schoolers, that's what you did.
Sure.
Then there's another version of romance that I really like, and that's like the long-term version of romance, where it's like, I'm gonna make something that I know is good for me, I know it's good for my wife, and something that she likes, and if I nail it, I'll be so happy because she gets happy when she eats that thing, right? And I feel like that's a different form of romance. It's just a different form of caring, because even then, like while we're eating, like we're not the best. We're not always tuned in. Like when we're eating, we're probably just watching a TV show, right?
Yeah.
So it's a totally different type, but because the romance happened elsewhere.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
for
So you can
sure.
have both, and they're both good.
And appreciate it. And I'll go over to my boyfriend's apartment and I'll prepare him something. And he loves watching me do things, like just watching me cook and be involved in whatever I'm preparing. And like you said, he finds that so hot, which I think is funny, but
That's because that's love.
that is love.
That's love. I mean, from a really foundational level, because the first love you received was your parents or your grandparents cooking for you. I mean, especially if you grew up, I don't know what it's like to grow up being like super wealthy. I grew up right in the middle.
Yeah.
So I don't claim to be like a poor kid or anything, but it's not like my entire life was eating at restaurants either, you know? So that was love too. It was like, here, I made this, especially if it was something you wanted. It was like your birthday and you're like, can you make that, Mom? Like, so it's so funny how all of these things that we do can be expressions of love, but then when you chop them down, or like the popular version is only one way to go about that. The popular version that we see in movies, the only way you could express love is to like take someone to a restaurant.
Yeah.
That's always going to be what I guess the more consumer commercialism view of the world is going to give you is which one stimulates the economy more.
Right.
That's the one we're going to sell. This just went deep on food,
I
but
know.
food is so central. I think we must also be a little hungry.
I think so.
That's probably a part of this. But then there's other forms of love too. I love making bread because sourdough is a unique thing still. More and more people are doing it. I love that.
Yeah.
But it's still like, I made some sourdough for you. It's like,
It's
I love bringing
more
bread
involved
to people.
than regular bread.
Yeah, right. And it's also a million times healthier. But you don't have to listen to that on this episode. People just go listen to Hannah Dela Cruz, the Tucson baker who I did an episode with. A couple episodes ago.
Nice.
She's phenomenal. Her book Sourdough Every Day is available now on Amazon.
Yeah.
Just like to plug. People.
No, perfect.
And to get back, I guess, to the real thing here, which is when you eat right, the way that affects your training is massive.
It is.
It's huge.
And I like to, after, a major tournament and a major camp, I'll eat like a fat kid and everything, all the comfort foods.
Sure.
Anything that's not even remotely good for me.
Yeah.
But it is when I'm in camp, I have to focus on, my food as fuel. What's going to get me through this comp class? What's gonna, get me through this day if I'm cutting weight and I'm thinking about, the nutritional aspect of it and, how many fats and salts I'm intaking.
Right.
And, I'm not going to be just mowing on some like chips if I'm in camp. That's empty calories. It may have some salts and some value, but I am trying to make myself into the best athlete I could possibly can, especially as an older athlete. I need all the edge I can get. And nutrition is one of those aspects of, especially in the jiu-jitsu community, that's just now starting to become, set in the dogma. It's before people were just like, oh, you just eat healthy, you just eat less or whatever.
Right.
But now, a lot of the athletes are, they're getting personal training. They're getting meal preps already set out for them. I can't afford meal prep, so I prep my own meals. But I do have to think about, my nutritional needs, and then I'm very aware of how I feel when I'm eating certain things. And so because I have this in-depth knowledge of how I feel myself, I can meal prep my own meals better than anybody else can, because I have that inside knowledge of, okay, so I was still a little bit lagging with this much, meat and rice or whatever I have that day. So I'm going to change it up a little bit, add some salts or add some fats and a little bit of salmon. Maybe I'll have sushi today just to kind of get me back on track.
Yep. Yeah, and it's so much personal experimentation too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It is. Mm-hmm.
But you have to do the work. You have to do that. You have to go to that. You have to go to that role and suffer and be like, wow, I sucked today.
Yeah.
And be like, all right, what was I eating yesterday?
Right.
And then you have to start putting those puzzle pieces together for yourself. And it's everybody's responsibility to do that for themselves because there's not.
It's going to be different for every single person.
100%. 100%. I mean, especially the interesting one is when you hear about like ultra marathoners who just eat like crap sometimes.
Oh, I know.
And you're just like, really? But for whatever reason, it just works for the individual.
Just the calories, yeah.
Or they just need that many calories to do what they're fucking doing, which is insane. It all depends. Or even like thru hikers. So there's a thru hiker from Tucson, Rachel Lee, who I'm good friends with now. I think we're friends, Rachel. Are we friends? No. And she is phenomenal and does these huge. Well, I'm mad at her because she didn't come. She was supposed to come here for the holidays, and she was like, "No, I'm going to stay in Seattle now," because that's where she is now. Like, fine, Rachel. But she must have different challenges when she's packing out for a giant thru hike, where she's going to be walking like hundreds of miles because you're going to have to carry what you can eat. So nutritionally dense becomes a different concept at that point, doesn't it? It's not just what's nutritionally dense, it's what can I put on my back and walk around with too. And everybody's sport has its own balance too. So you just have to do it for yourself. No one can do it for you. But certainly like going to restaurants and having no idea what you're eating, that will never do it for you.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know, the caloric content of what somebody else is preparing for you. And, and there are certain exceptions in the jiu-jitsu community. I mean, Gary Tonin was notorious for having, his diet was pizza and burgers, and he would post about it, and then he would go and just smash everybody. And so that's like definitely a lot of that was his talent,
To be fair, I eat a lot of pizza and burgers.
Yeah.
That makes up a huge part of my diet, but it's all sourdough.
Oh.
So it's totally, I feel like it's a totally different food at that point. And I make it all myself.
I don't think I've ever had a burger with sourdough buns.
The sourdough buns are fun.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. I should have brought some of those too. I had an extra batch, but I was like, I'm going to need to eat something this week. I can't give you guys all my bread. No, yeah, it's just totally different for everybody, and the needs are different.
But also he jumped into MMA, and now I think he's forced to eat good when he's cutting different sport. And also, the cutting that they do in MMA is far more drastic than the cutting they do for jiu-jitsu, because you can weigh in the day before, and often some of these guys are walking around at 175, and they may fight at 155 or 145.
That's crazy.
And so that's a huge cut, and you can't do that on burgers and pizza.
Right. Yeah, no.
Regardless of whether there's
even
sourdough
if it's sourdough
or not.
I know, I get that. But for me, like, my challenge in life usually was to not lose weight, because I just naturally lose.
Oh, really?
Way too much weight.
Must be
I was
nice.
super skinny. Yeah, but I'm getting older now, so that'll change probably too.
Yeah.
And it's all just a great big experiment, isn't it? Like, no one's got a right answer. I think the next one is going to be breathing, though. I'm convinced of that, especially because I just read the James Nestor book Breath, which is becoming big.
Somebody recommended to me. So one of my goals this year is to read at least 2 books every single month. And
Nice.
so I have a list. I posted, hey, what are your recommendations? And I put all of their recommendations, including who recommended it, on this Excel sheet. And I went through Amazon, and I pulled all the descriptions just to give myself, okay, what am I going to read next?
Yeah.
And somebody recommended that.
Yeah.
And it's on my list. So I'm going to have to read it now.
I finished it in a day. It was.
Yeah.
I just dove into it. It's phenomenal. I mean, I learned so much, and all these things I didn't realize I was doing.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of difficult because I just like focus on just like breathing through my nose all the time, because that's sort of one of the huge points of the book, is just like stop breathing through your mouth.
Yeah.
But then there's great breathing exercises in there, and
Oh, nice.
so I've been doing some breathing pretty much since we got to Tucson. Like around the time we got here, I don't remember exactly what got me back into it, because I'd only
Probably
done it on and
jiu-jitsu.
off, but I think so. And also, you know what it was? Is I saw the Hicks and Gracie clip
Yeah.
where he's doing that
the
crazy.
belly breaths. Yeah.
And I was like, I need to start breathing again. It's so cool. So I got into it a little bit, but then yesterday I actually did one of the guided Wim Hof ones.
Oh.
And I've done his stuff on my own before.
Uh-huh.
I'd never done the YouTube video of
Yeah.
him walking you through it. And literally at the end, it was 3 rounds of this different breathing. And I just started smiling, and I didn't realize I was smiling. And I literally was like, I'm fucking floating right now, aren't I?
Whoa.
And my whole body had no weight for a minute. And
Wow.
I was so I'm going to keep going on that.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I've been interested in breath work. Even before I started jiu-jitsu, I ran a little bit. I was a runner in middle school. I didn't do it in high school because I got into the cutting horses. But I would get terrible stitches in my side whenever I was running. And I switched over to a nose breathing, and I didn't read anything about it. I just kind of tried to see if I could breathe through my nose. And so when I'm running, I take 2 breaths in with my nose and then 1 breath out through my nose. And I've never gotten a stitch ever again.
Yeah, cardio with your nose is a really important thing, and it's hard. You have to work up to it.
Yeah.
I had it going really good. We were staying in Indiana in August. It was humid. It was warm. It's really easy to breathe through your nose there. Here, when I go out in the morning and it's 40 degrees and it's dry as hell, it is so much harder to breathe through your nose the whole time. I finally did it yesterday. I did my kind of normal 1.5 miles, and I did the whole thing through my nose, and the entire rest of the day, even still today, I feel like my sinus is just real upset. It hurts back there. But I think it's just like anything else. I was thinking about it afterwards, and I was like, if I went to the gym and hit a new muscle group for the first time ever, and it was sore and it hurt, I'd be like, yeah, that was good. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So why would I panic about that? Why would
Right.
I avoid that pain? So we're going to keep working on it.
No, head pains we tend to be a little bit more sissy about.
Yeah. We just find reasons to not get into it. But the weird thing was that the couple times I've done this, I was just like, I'm going to focus on my breath and not worry about my pace. And I looked at the end of the run, and I had cut 15 seconds off my pace, my mile pace.
Interesting.
And I thought I was going slow.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was taking it easy so that I could keep up.
Yeah.
And I apparently was not. So I really think breathing is going to be the next big thing. And you can do it more in jiu-jitsu than you can in MMA.
Yeah.
Because in MMA, there's going to be a point where you're going to take enough shots to the nose that you're not going to be able to breathe through it.
Right.
But I feel like with jiu-jitsu, that's going to become, it probably already is, and I just don't know it.
It is. And that's what, I was thinking about is, when I do jiu-jitsu, it's almost, and I've been doing it for 12 years, it's almost at a subconscious level, my breathing.
Right.
Is I know, I'm just breathing through every single movement, and when I'm in a bad spot, I just keep breathing, keep that same tempo of breathing. And that's what keeps me from, freaking out in a certain position and being able to think, okay, I'm still delivering oxygen to my brain. I'm not doing this consciously, but I'm still delivering plenty of oxygen to my brain, and it's keeping me thinking.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to kind of go, or even to the muscles.
Yeah.
And absolutely for jiu-jitsu, it's not talked about.
It's not quite talked about.
Not a lot.
I think that's what I mean, I guess, is that
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I'm out of the zeitgeist of people who are doing this and have been doing this forever. But I just don't think enough people are talking about it
No,
quite yet.
I don't think so. Or
to
even,
realize the benefit.
practicing it or consciously trying to regulate it.
Well, when you're new, like when you're me, and I'm rolling, there's so many other
Yeah.
things I'm thinking about. The thought that I could think about breathing through my
To
nose
survive.
is hilarious.
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to not die.
Yeah.
I've been sad. I have not felt the same for a few days now. I got my arm pop last week, and I haven't been able to roll. It's still real
Shoulder
sore.
or
No,
elbow?
my elbow.
Yeah. Armbar.
Mm-hmm. That's a scary moment.
It is. I've had my elbow popped twice.
Yeah.
And you always think, how long is this going to take to heal? Am I going to be back? Actually, I don't. So the last one was probably, it was before COVID and pre-COVID terms, over a year ago, about a year and a couple months. It was at Pans, and I just, I didn't go in there, in the right mindset. And, I should have smashed this girl, and I didn't. She had great mom strength. She had one thing that she was going to execute, and that's what she did. And so she got me into this arm bar, and she bellied down, and I felt little pop tears.
Yeah.
And it blew up so big. And I was visiting my best friend. She lives in Manhattan. And, I had 3 extra days planned to kind of hang out with her, and I could do just about nothing.
Yeah, that's.
And I still like.
Oh no! Don't tell me that.
Nah.
No.
But I don't. I should be stretching it
Okay.
regular, even now. But
Okay.
yes, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I clearly mine was not as bad as yours because it's not like it's swelled up massively or anything.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
But it's still, I think, just for my first time to have that happen, and
It's
I was
scary.
like, "What just happened? Like, did you just fucking break my arm? Is that it?" But then I guess I had this weird sense, like watching especially after the Tony Ferguson fight, when he really bent it farther than an arm
Yeah,
was
it
allowed
could-
to
it
go.
could go.
I
go
was just
ways.
like, well, if he can survive that, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
But it wasn't fun still, and it definitely. I broke my elbow in high school. This
Oh.
elbow, and I have still memories of that.
Yeah.
Because I literally broke it.
How do you break an elbow? Did you crack the?
I was playing soccer on wet grass, and I fell right
Ooh,
on it, like straight armed into the
Yeah.
ground, and so it popped. It cracked my
Yeah.
I don't remember which one it was. One of the wrist bones.
Oh, okay.
And but it haunts me a little bit because that
Mhm.
was, I think, the day before I started high school. So I walked in as a freshman to this brand new school with a cast, and I couldn't write. That was my
Yeah.
right hand.
Oh,
I couldn't write
no.
for several months.
Yeah.
And I'm like writing like left-handed. It just is like, I don't know what my teachers must have thought of
Oh,
me.
yeah.
I was like, what is this dude? Like, what is he doing? I thought this kid was smart. He's not,
Yeah.
he's not doing
Where
too
did he
good.
come from?
Like, he's smart in class, and then I see these papers, and it's like, buddy, you missed writing class. I did miss writing classes too. No, sorry, this is way too much about mine. But it took me back when it popped, and I was like, no, not again.
Yeah.
And I think that's a strange thing about jiu-jitsu is I don't love what's the word I'm looking for? Overly thinking about like traumas. I feel like everybody's like, ooh, past traumas.
Yeah.
I'm not big into that.
I like to move on. It
Yeah, I'm
happened,
with you.
It was upsetting. Okay, we're
But
moving on.
I didn't have really dark traumas either. So,
Sure.
I get that some people had some really dark ones.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think that unless we're talking about the really dark ones, I know those exist, that the rest of them, we're kind of like giving ourselves way too much of an excuse to not do
Yeah.
things sometimes.
Mhm.
But with jiu-jitsu, we've all had something in the past. We've all had some injury. We've all had something go wrong that must make you feel really vulnerable. And that was a moment for me. where I was
Yeah,
like, oh,
especially
shit.
immediately.
have to-
You always, it's always in the back of your mind. After you've hurt something, is it vulnerable again?
Right.
I remember I dislocated my patella. It was during a tournament actually,
Ouch.
and I was taking this girl's back, and I kind of hooked my heel, and she kind of extended her hips at the same time, and man, it felt like my patella had just went ping and right into the
jeez.
stands. And I made this sound like, oh. And usually in jiu-jitsu, if you make any kind of verbal sound, it's a verbal tap. And I looked at the referee, and he wasn't saying anything, and I was already on her back. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to finish this.
You did not.
I finished it.
That's
I rear
wild.
naked choked her, and we were supposed to stand up, and I looked at him, and I was like, I don't think I can stand up. And so he took my hand, and as soon as I put my foot on it, it felt like my patella went bong right back off of the stands, back into my knee. But that thing swelled up like a watermelon.
Wow.
And I had to stay off the mat for 2 months. Luckily, it wasn't anything worse. It was just it strained my LCL, is what it did, and I probably have a couple of tears in the meniscus. And I was off the mat for 2 months, and then for probably a good year, I couldn't sit flat on my feet when you're sitting on your knees.
Sure.
I couldn't sit flat on my feet. There was some tension, and probably a good year. There was always some little voice in the back of my mind thinking, don't compromise your knee, give up. And I've always been really, knock on wood, I haven't had any really serious injuries. And I think it's just my mentality is I'll always give up the sweep. I'll always kind of give if I feel a little compromised, I'll
Right.
give. And I think a lot of these major injuries happen because people don't give, or they don't recognize that moment that they need to give.
Absolutely.
And so luckily I've been relatively injury free, but it was always in the back of my mind, especially initially. Do I want to like I'm worried about this, should I be doing this move? Or, if they put any kind of pressure on me, it's like knee. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I'm out of the moment in jiu-jitsu. And in jiu-jitsu, you want to be in the moment completely.
We've all got something in our past like that. When I first started, I had a rib thing right away, which I think probably happens to a lot of people. Just my I don't know exactly what happened. I think it was probably just like the muscles in between your ribs got messed up or torn or something.
And you went to move.
Exactly. So I couldn't take any weight on there for quite a while. I couldn't even like really sit upright. And now I think I'm always going to be just a little bit like when I get like inside control and just like, but we've all got that. Man, if we were smarter as a society, I feel like physical therapy would be way more accessible than it is.
Yeah.
It's crazy that it's so hard to like get physical therapy without it being either crazy expensive or not really like someone who knows what they're doing.
Right. Or just out of the way. You know?
We need that so much. It's almost like we all need to get that knowledge somehow and become our own physical therapists so that we can work on ourselves all the time.
It's interesting. I have a friend out in Boston, and it's a couple. So he's a black belt, and she just got her black belt, I think about a year ago. And he's a physical therapist, and that was the issue is, some of these people are, even before they get hurt, they're not moving correctly, and so they're increasing the likelihood of getting hurt. And so there's this kind of idea, and it's grown in popularity, both not so much in jiu-jitsu yet. That's what his kind of thing is he's trying to increase that awareness of it, but in a lot of these pro athlete arenas, prehab is really big. And so not just lifting weights and which is important as well, but knowing the correct movements of your bones and your sockets and your ligaments and your joints, and doing these exercises that strengthen those movements and those micro muscles and those micro like connections. And so he's doing prehab, and I did a few articles, little blog articles for him. And the more I learned about it, the more I was like, this makes a lot of sense. And I think, I've always been very active throughout my life. And so correct movement patterns, it's easier for me because I've always, from a young age, I was always, barefoot in the dirt, in the dirt, in like Tucson dirt, and like rocks and shit, and climbing mountains and climbing trees, and so my body was naturally learning as I was growing how to move correctly.
Right.
But you see a lot of people, and they don't know how to move correctly. They don't know how to walk. Their posture's terrible and things, and so they have a greater propensity for getting injured, especially in a sport like jiu-jitsu, where you are in often very compromising positions.
It's wrestling. There's a lot going on.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh, you're so right. I need you to send me his contact info because I feel like that'd be an excellent person
to talk
to.
It's just BJJ Prehab, and if you're ever in Boston, for sure.
That sounds cool. I think it's getting better, but it's exactly what we were talking about before, which is when you're too many people cutting out the nuance of life, and that's a very nuanced thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if all you're doing is like you've got like for most people, they're I don't know, whatever their physical activity is, it's either going to be their recreation activity or it's going to be some, people who run or go to the gym. Like I feel like that's the most common thing. And so you've got this in this tiny window, and you're just going to do that one thing, and then again, you're just going to go work in an office or sit at a computer all day.
Yeah. And hunched over.
Right. And then you're not going to make your own dinner. You're not, so you're going to go straight from there to sitting on a couch. So you just the limit that we've got in terms of what we're doing and how mobile we're being is so limited.
Right.
It's wild. And I mean, even I've heard good reasons to not like always be sitting on chairs. Like we would naturally be sitting on the ground a lot more often. So sometimes I'll try to like work sitting on the ground, or whatever.
Or squatting or
squatting or people do the standing desk thing. But there's so much. Did you really just get tangled in my headphones? Step over it. There you go.
Entirely unconcerned about it as well.
For the audio listeners, that was a very cute kitten who just like walked through my headphones. But there's different camps when it comes to like taking care of our bodies for whatever reasons. There's people who are going to subscribe to the camp of standing desks,
Yeah.
That's like their thing,
Mm-hmm.
And so we just forget that there's like, nah, you probably need to be doing a little bit of everything.
Right.
Our bodies are really complicated.
Yeah.
And there's another book for you, actually,
Ooh.
is Civilized to Death. Did anybody recommend that one for your list?
I feel like it's come across my recommendations
Yeah.
like on Amazon.
It's Dr. Christopher Ryan. He's most famous for writing Sex at Dawn.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's why it sounds familiar.
That's
I read Sex at Dawn.
Phenomenal book as well.
It was amazing.
Yeah, amazing book. He really knows his shit. But
Mhm.
Civilized to Death, he goes more in depth on literally everything that we do and how we've gotten away from our like hunter-gatherer background, right? And ignored our own evolution.
Yeah.
So that book is phenomenal.
Oh, I
for that as
definitely
well.
have to read it. I got rid of most of my books, or a good chunk, probably about 60%. And I took them to Bookman's here in Tucson. If you've never been, you need to go before you leave. It is the best independent bookstore in Arizona.
I can't go. I can't walk into a
I know. That
wonderful
would be- yeah.
thrift bookstore.
Sorry.
I can't do it.
Now you have to.
I'm sure it's great, but that's my favorite place.
But I have a $90 credit.
Oh,
for
man.
books. And so I'm going through my list, and
Just treat it like your own library
Yeah.
at that point.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, no, you should definitely look at that
Yeah.
book too.
Civilized to
if
Death
you like
and
Sex at Dawn
Breathe,
and Civilized to Death.
right?
I think it's called Breath.
Or Breath. Okay.
Yeah, it's Breath.
I'll
I
see
don't
if I
think
can't
there's an
find
E on the
those.
end. Yeah, two really, really good ones. Yeah, I'm way too much of a book fiend. I'm sorry, but he's another really good one that talks about that. And I feel like there was even somebody else whose book I have not read yet, but I got to hear him on some podcast talk about movement and like how we should be hanging from things more often.
Oh.
And just like all the things we should do.
Like the movement natural movement.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that guy? I think it was on Aubrey Marcus's podcast, probably. He was talking about just like the yoga of life and like how everything you do should be yoga in some way.
Oh, that's
and like
cool.
how to move throughout your
Yeah.
day. And I really sounded good. I have not done it.
I know. Movement. Yeah.
Here's the other thing though that I will tack onto this.
Mhm.
As much as I like to learn about my body and learn the right ways to heal, sometimes I think that the more we learn takes away from the power of the placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I will shut out information. So like I don't want to so okay, I'll use supplements as an example. I like taking supplements.
Yeah.
I like taking turmeric, for
Uh-huh.
instance, because from what I've heard, that helps with inflammation,
Mhm.
and we're all trying to fight that. And it's also food-based, so I like that.
Yeah.
But
Do you cook with it?
no,
Or you
because
take
you know what? I stopped cooking with it because it got too messy. Everything in my kitchen turned yellow,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't handle that
Yeah.
anymore. Like
I used
yellow
to put my coffee
everywhere.
in there. Like anytime I spilled my coffee, I was like,
So no,
oh.
I went to the supplement because I was like, I can't cook with this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the supplement and stop cooking with this. I'm sorry. I know, and it tastes good too, but it's just I couldn't do it. And especially now, like in the RV we're in, at some point I got to give that back,
Oh.
and so I can't have it turn yellow.
Yeah.
So I like turmeric. So if I'm not gonna go out and seek out 1,000 articles online as to whether or not turmeric is good for me,
Right.
because it's a very cheap supplement.
Mm-hmm.
And if it even does a little bit of what it's saying, and then the power of my mind says, oh, I'm taking this pill and
Sure.
it's doing all that for me, I know that I can provide inflammation relief to my body.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So sometimes I stop taking in information. And I'm perfectly willing to like use ignorance as a tool.
Yeah.
As
Or
long as it's
even-
not going to be harmful, then
maybe the power of belief is working in that. I think there's a real power in just believing something, and the placebo effect is an example of that. But even just a friend of mine she's a believer of if you want something in life, you ask the universe, you just put it out there, and like a statistically significant percentage of the time it happens.
you're talking about the secret kind of stuff.
Oh, I haven't read The
Right?
Secret. It's
So-
also on my recommended book list.
I think it's all well and good. I don't like to be mean about anybody's, philosophy of how to go about doing things but I think that some of the nuance that like The Secret misses is it's just being like, this will just happen. But the nuance is like,
No, you gotta
you're
make it
gonna,
happen. Yeah.
you're going to make things happen,
Right.
but having a goal is really important. So I don't know.
Mhm.
But you're right. So Tucson famously Dr. Andrew Weil lives here, who like started integrative medicine in this
Oh.
country and is amazing. And he's a big believer in hypnotherapy and in guided imagery and how our brains can heal ourselves when we're putting the right thoughts into it. I mean, and he references tests where like people who are like super allergic to roses will like they've done tests where they will show them a plastic rose and they will have an allergic reaction.
Oh, wow.
So if that doesn't make you question a lot of shit.
Yeah.
So the fact that they can help train people to stop having allergies to things through hypnotherapy, through imagery.
Interesting.
And there's way deeper and deeper levels of like what you can achieve when your brain kind of gets out of your body's way and lets you do it. He talks about he's got some crazy stories about like, because he does a lot of acid or did a lot of acid.
Is he on your podcast?
No, I'm not cool enough to have Dr. Andrew Weil on my podcast. He's on like Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this dude he's legit. But he talks about like getting how he always used to get sunburn, and then he did LSD one day and sat in the sun all day and tanned and didn't burn. And like how just powerful our brains are at affecting our own tissues in our body, you know? And I get it. I think the idea that your brain could affect your melanocytes makes sense. Like when people talk about don't wear sunglasses because you'll sunburn less if you see the sun, you know?
Interesting.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So, but I just think I like taking in a lot of health information. And at a certain point, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful. I don't think I'm going to hurt myself doing this. And now I'm just going to use positive power and just make it happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's why I need to sit Kyle down for a talk about sourdough before he eats this, because he thinks he's gonna feel terrible after he eats bread and all these things.
Yeah.
So I need to sell him and make him realize what it is first.
Yeah.
I can do that. I know my shit about it. But I feel like all of those things are powerful, and they must be powerful in jiu-jitsu too. I got to imagine that the difference in mindset with the more experience that you have, and like, is there anything you do with your mindset before you walk into a competition? Like, how do you get yourself to a point where you can use that confidence that you have to get in there?
So I was actually just I was given a private this last weekend, and she asked me the same thing, and I try to put myself in the mindset that the same mindset I would have walking into the gym at 10th Planet or at Atos. You know, I try to convince myself it's not a big deal. You know, it's never a big deal when I walk into the gym and I know, and I'm training with whoever, you know, and I try to keep reminding myself that it's not a big deal. And I put myself, for example, I read a book. It was a sports psychology book, and they talked about the 3 different preparation styles for a lot of these sports. And one of them is, you know, you go off by yourself and you meditate and you're very quiet and you find a quiet spot.
Okay.
And then the other one was, you know, you get pumped up and you listen to angry
metal music.
and you slap your face and, you know, and the other one is you interact with people and you're gregarious, and, you know, was mine. Actually. And before, I thought I had to go by myself. I thought I had to like get pumped up, you know, and I never did very well. And then, but when I'm at an academy, I'm talking, I'm bullshitting, I'm, you know, just doing normal everyday stuff. And so I started bringing that to the tournaments and just chatting with whoever I saw and being my social self. And I started doing really well, partly, I think, because it keeps my mind off of jiu-jitsu. I know when I go to a competition, I'm as ready as I'll ever be. I have all the knowledge I need to do what I need to do. And if I spend any time, you know, worrying about, okay, this person's going to do this or this person's going to do that, like it's just, it doesn't work for me. And so I try to keep myself distracted and calm throughout the entire time. And, you know, even when I do listen to music, I'll listen to the same music I listen to when I run my comp classes. You know, Mercedes, Tony's wife, jokes whenever she hears this one song, she gets a little anxious because she knows it's comp class, you know, because I play the same playlist every single comp class. And those are the songs that kind of get me in that, okay, we're going to roll mood, but not in an angry or, you know, like an anxious way. And so, gosh, since I've been doing that, the only time I'll ever feel even a flutter in my stomach is that those few seconds before they call me on the mat,
Yeah.
before the referee goes like this. And, and then once I'm on the mat, it's like I'm back. Just a few seconds before I was just, I would get butterflies in my stomach for weeks before. And I hear of, girls that are just sick to their stomach thinking about the tournament and so anxious. And, but I just put myself in that mindset where it's just another day at the academy, and I consciously make those decisions to put me in that space, that mental space. So yeah, that's what I do and it won't work for anybody or everybody. And, and it's just my personal style. And I think also, and PJ Barch, he gave the seminar just recently, and he had an interesting comment about that as well. Is, he doesn't focus on the winning or the losing. I know that fly is just going to die. Yeah. He doesn't focus on winning or losing, which is, I think, where a lot of people sabotage themselves. But he thinks about executing what's important, having little goals and executing them and what's important for him. And that's what I do. Recently I've been working on leg locks with Tony and working on my wrestling. And, when I go into a match, yeah, it'd be fun to win, but I'm not obsessive about that. I don't need to win. It's not, even if I do win, who's going to remember that 2-3 years from now? Mm-hmm. Nobody. It really, in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter.
That's like a classic Stoic philosophy kind of way that you do it, I feel like. But everybody does have their own preparation, and if you ignore that part, I don't think you make it very far. I think you got to recognize what it is for you, and at some point you'll just find it.
Yeah.
I like your approach. I don't think it could be my approach at the same time, because I must be different from you.
Yeah.
I like to get really like moody and angsty when I'm about to do something hard. I like to like be alone and think about all the things that make me mad, and then I'll somehow just perform.
Oh,
well.
yeah, definitely not what I'm about at all.
But I think it can change in your life too. I mean, you hear about performers who have been performing for years and have huge audiences and still like throw up before every performance.
Yeah.
Somehow that just works for them.
That would be terrible.
I think that would be really hard. Yeah. I was just curious kind of how that goes through your mind, because for me, I've got nothing but fear when I start rolling with somebody. You know what I mean? And I try not to, but I know I'm going to get smashed. That's just where I'm at right now. Maybe one day that changes and goes away and I can relax.
And the good thing about jiu-jitsu, is that there's always a tap. You can always tap and tap out. It's like that's why I've never really feared rolling with anyone. I've always had maybe some anxiety about, okay, this person looks like they're going to snap a limb off, and so I got to be really careful. But I can always tap. As soon as I feel like I'm in a compromising position, I can tap.
Yeah.
But maybe it's, for me, I've also been doing it long enough that I recognize whenever I'm in a compromising situation.
But isn't there so much pressure as a black belt?
Oh, absolutely.
To never lose?
Oh, yeah. And it's a terrible way of thinking, because that's what, that's why people cry on the mat when they lose, and somebody's got to lose. Everybody's got to lose, But there is, you expect a black belt to know everything and to be almighty, and that's just not the case. And there was a lot of pressure when I first got my black belt, especially, I had a target on my back, but I've always had a target on my back, even when I got my blue belt, I was a blue belt female, and all the white belt guys, just starting, they couldn't lose to a woman. So there's always been a target on my back.
That's a weird one. I don't.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But, and I've also received questions, how do you deal with, for example, if I go to a seminar and we're rolling afterwards, and some purple belt or brown belt guy who may be stronger or bigger or whatever to me, is just trying to smash the crap out of me because I have a target on my back, because I'm also a black belt, and they're, how do I deal with that? And, I just remind myself, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't say anything about who I am as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, who I am as a coach, as a competitor. That's one moment in a million moments.
Yeah.
And I also focus on the little victories. You know, if I'm with somebody who's obviously much stronger and bigger than me, I'm just going to keep them from getting the side control. That's my victory. I don't have to submit them.
Right.
If I don't want to.
Yeah, because it's so silly. Because what are you going to do? You can't change their weight or your
No.
weight. The world is the way the world is.
Yeah.
And the truth is that, like, most of us would be hard pressed to be a sumo wrestler even with jujitsu, because it's like, I can't, that neck is, you know, not really accessible. You know, it just, the physics are physics. I think I really like not having a competitive aspect to what I want to do with jujitsu. I don't have any interest in competing.
And you don't need to.
Yeah.
I always encourage everybody to try it at least once.
Sure.
Because that's an element of jujitsu that you need to know about. You know, it's an experience that's so profoundly changing. And I've said this a long time. And one tournament is worth 3 months of training.
Really?
The amount of growth and insight into your own game that you get from one competition is ridiculous.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so for that, you know, I love competing, but I love competing because I love growing, you know, and that's why I compete. I want to keep growing. I want to keep feeling growth and greater insight into who I am. And as a competitor, as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, but also as a human being, you know, how do I react to this loss or this win?
Yeah.
But yeah, I encourage you to at least do it once, you know, even if it's a
I'm
little
sure
small
I'll
in-house
try it.
tournament.
I just feel like I feel like some people love jiu-jitsu for jiu-jitsu, and that could change, and I could find myself feeling that way at some point. But at the moment, I love jiu-jitsu because I love self-defense. So I love the idea of being able to take care of myself or the people I love.
Yeah.
That's always going to be so much more of a driver. That's why I'm there every day.
Right.
You know what I mean? As opposed to chasing the next belt or a competition or a career or whatever, you know?
Right.
So I feel like it's just about what drives you, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
everybody's
And
got different things.
everybody's own drive is perfectly fine. You know,
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong for anybody. There's no cookie cutter response.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's beautiful about jiu-jitsu is everybody can have their own motives. Everybody has their own game. It doesn't matter who you are, what color your skin is, whether you're a man or a woman or big or small or whatever. Jiu-jitsu, has something for everybody. And it has something different for everybody.
Yeah. And I think I heard an interesting thing from, I think it was Jocko Willink talking about this, he was talking about how the belts should also be, I don't know if he's saying if they are, but should be also a reflection of an individual's progression as opposed to some mass progression in the sport.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So someone's blue belt looks different from someone else's blue belt.
Absolutely.
And all the way up until maybe a black belt, where it's like there's probably a real deep standard on this. You know what I mean?
Well,
but,
yes and no. Like there are still, you know, for me, I got my black belt in about 8.5 years, and some other people, they got their black belt in 15 years or 6 years, and some are competitors, and you know, some are never compete in their entire life, but their commitment to the technique and their commitment to the community, you know, is a reflection of that's what their black belt means. You know, so it is different.
Yeah, that's always been interesting to me too. I feel like that. At the start, I was like, I like jiu-jitsu, but I don't know if I'm interested in this belt system as a thing. I think I'd like to just be a white belt forever.
Yeah.
I don't really. But then when I recognized that it could also be a response to how I would progress individually, that made me a little more like, oh, now I can understand that it's less about meeting a generalized standard than it is about.
Yeah. And there is no standard, you know, across the board. Thank God.
Yeah. Well, who would decide?
I know.
You know?
Exactly. IBJJF tried to put out recommendations, and so there's this chart. But I don't believe in everybody following that, you know. But I've always been a little bit of a unorthodox jiu-jitsu practitioner. You know, I've traveled. I've gotten my belts from different people. You know, and I've maintained really good relationships with every single one of my professors. And you know, we started this podcast, you know, I don't believe in the idea of creonchiism, you know, I don't believe, I think change is everywhere, and the only constant thing in this world is change. And so why not change? You can't maintain this any thought as it relates to jiu-jitsu or to life.
Yeah. There's a lot of philosophy in this sport. That's for sure.
Right.
You don't hear this kind of philosophy in every sport.
No.
Because not everybody can do every sport.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you get a sport where it's like, no, everybody can have some benefit from this.
Yeah.
You know,
wild.
Then we have to decide some sort of philosophy for how this is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's been interesting. And the other thing that's cool too is I'm sure I'll listen, just like with our last episode, to this one, be like, what were you talking about? But this is just, that's what this is. This is a reflection of how you feel and how I feel at this moment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What we've experienced so far. And then it also leaves open room for that will change at some point. And we'll both have different opinions about all these things. At some point, you'll be like, no, I listen to heavy metal music and go crazy before I compete, and I'll do the same. I don't know.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is by Alan Watts. It's, we exist only in this moment, and in this moment we are infinite and eternal.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. You are a stoic. You are. Have you read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations?
No,
yet?
I haven't.
Yeah, he talks a lot about how the only thing that you own is the present moment.
Yeah.
No one can ever take anything away from you because they can never take the present moment.
Oh, that's right
nothing
on.
that's ever that happened or will happen could take the present moment from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a phenomenal approach.
Yeah.
I've given you too many books, though. To read
No, bring them on.
Well, that's a lofty goal. 2 books a month is pretty good.
It's going to be challenging, but I think I'll pepper in, some shorter reads with some longer reads. And,
yeah.
I'm a little ahead right now, but it's only January.
That's how you should start the year.
Yeah.
Because by September or October, you'll be like, oh, shit.
Right.
Wait, what? The lead's gone. You don't want to be in December having to read 6 books. It's not a good place to go. Are you going to read them all, physically read them, or are you going to listen to some?
Physically read them.
See, that's fair, too, because that's a totally different challenge.
And I'll definitely read some audiobooks, but they won't count toward my, 24 book goal. Yeah.
Yeah. I always find that it's such a good excuse to cook, if anything. You
Yeah.
know? Because if I want to read a book, it's like, oh, well, I could cook up this thing and I could listen to a book, and I'm doing 2 things at once. But not everybody can also do 2 things at once, and so I understand when other people are like, will judge me for that. We were just thinking the other day about these. You remember those tests? I don't know if you had to take these tests when you were a kid that were like AR tests, and you had to pass you had to read a book, and then you'd take a quiz about the book to make sure that you had read it, and then you'd get points for this.
Yeah, we had something similar like that. Yeah, and you had to write a little blurb about that book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you can't pass that test, then you didn't really read the book.
Yes.
Right. Even as an adult, there's still a standard. It's like,
right.
did you
and I
absorb
find
it?
myself if I'm not super into the book or I'm in a slow passage, I'll find myself following the words but thinking about something else, and I'll get to the end of the paragraph and I'm like, shit, I have no idea what they just
I'll
said.
go farther than that. I'll be 5 pages later, and I'll be like, oh fuck, when did I tune out? And you're like, page back. No. Nope. Oh man, how long we can be thinking about something else other than the thing we're supposed to be thinking about is absolutely wild. Power of the mind.
Really,
it's a big one.
But I need to listen to more audiobooks. My mentor, I've been doing clay and stuff, pottery.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
I can't believe we haven't talked about that yet, actually, because it's really cool. I saw some of your stuff.
It's become a very
inside.
interesting part of my life, and I started about, I would say, a year and a half ago. And my mentor is her husband. She and her husband have known me since I was really little, and her husband is a client of my parents. And my dad's a horse trainer, and he competes with the cutting horses. And, she never really got into that, but she's like a master potter. She's been potting for well over 10, 12, maybe even 15 years. And she does these amazing sculptures. And so I was taking classes at a local place here in Tucson, and it was fun, and I was getting the hang of it.
Yeah.
And then COVID started, and she's like, come pot at my place. It's safer. Or even before COVID, she invited me over there because the place that I was potting at was, she was worried about how healthy it was to be there, because there was dust particles everywhere and glaze. You don't want to breathe in glaze particles that are sanded off or anything like that, because some of them are like
working
pretty
in the
far
coal
down
mines.
on the
Jeez.
periodic table.
Yeah.
And so she invited me over there, and I've been potting about, I would say, once every week or 2 weeks, and getting the hang of it.
That's
and,
cool.
Oh, but she listens to audiobooks when she's alone. She'll just be working and listening to a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about that, and I was like, I've tried listening to some podcasts, and I'm in that in-between stage, I think, in learning something that I need to be a little bit more present on what I'm doing that I can't yet divide my time. I can put music on, but I can't listen to a book.
Yeah,
or a
especially with a
podcast.
new skill too.
Yeah.
But it depends on what your flow state is. My flow state has always been listening to something.
Yeah.
I recently, I guess still within the last year here, had to fully cut cold turkey streaming shows while I did other things.
Oh.
Like Netflix was a real dangerous one for me for a long time to just sort of like have The Office on or something, or on a bad day something even more engaging like Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm doing that while I'm trying to do other things, and I'm not really doing either one. Am I?
And you're watching the show.
Yeah.
More than,
So I still let myself do podcasts because I find I can tune those ones out pretty easily, especially if I'll just find like a guest I'm not that interested in. But like I listen to way too much Joe Rogan, and I'll just find somebody funny, and I can kind of tune in when I want and tune out when I want.
Yeah.
And then audiobooks I'll save for when I'm really like I can be engaged in this, like if I'm walking or riding the motorcycle or whatever.
Right.
But it just those things put me in the flow state. If you make me work in silence, I'll have a very, very hard time getting things out. Although I do it to myself sometimes. I make myself do it so that I don't, just like anything else, so I don't become hooked on anything.
Dependent.
Or music. Music is, I'll just get sad when I listen to music.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so weird with
Gosh,
music.
it's the type of music you're listening to, I think.
No, I listen to all types of music.
Angsty,
I think I just get sad. I get too introspective, and I'm like, oh, everything's sad, isn't it?
There's a lot of sad music out there.
I do listen. I like sad music, but I try to listen to other stuff too, and I still just find myself feeling sad, which is weird. I always like music, but too sad. Can't do it. But yeah, you just have to find that thing that puts you in that flow state. I find that it's really hard in jiu-jitsu too, because there's almost always music playing, and it's never my music, and I have a real hard time doing other shit while that's going on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very, very challenging. But I don't decide the music. It's not my gym. You know. But like the other day, the Rolling Stones were on, and I was in a much better place because I was like, that's my music.
I feel that too. I'll definitely perform or roll a little bit better when I like the music.
Yeah.
Especially at this stage in my career, where like I can really have fun with. I'm never worried about what position I'm going to be in, so I can really have fun with, timing my movements to the music.
Right. Right. That's cool. I very much like your kitten there. She's very active, and I like that. She was eyeballing those birds.
She was. She won't. It's a few years yet that she'll even actually get one.
Right.
Unless she tries.
Have you seen the stats on how many birds household cats eat, domesticated cats eat in a year?
That's a lot.
I mean, they eat billions. Billions of birds are getting killed
and they're not
by
eating
domesticated
them
cats.
either.
No, they're just killing them. Yeah, you're right. They're not even, it's just for sport. If this was humans doing this, it'd be like, whoa, stop killing all the birds. But everybody's like, let's get a cat.
I know. It's terrible.
It's so strange.
I get flack for having outdoor cats as well.
Do you?
Like there's a lot of cat owners who believe that, you need to protect your cats and keep them indoors, kind of thing. And, my cats have always been, growing up on the ranch, we always had outdoor cats, and sometimes they'd come in but indoor, I feel like especially my other cat, Fleas, he has his own life, he'll come in and he'll cuddle with me, and we'll sleep together at night, and then during the day he's off doing whatever he does.
Yeah.
But he would not be happy if I kept him indoors. He's just too inquisitive and too independent. And actually, he wasn't happy when he was, I was living in San Diego. I dropped him off at my parents' place. So he lived with my mom, and they don't have a doggy door. And so he wasn't able to just go in and out at will. And he acted out against that. He didn't like that. And so I feel like, it's kind of scary, having not knowing where he is and, you know,
Right.
if he's safe. But I think his quality of life is a lot better.
Yeah, like animals should be allowed to live the way they're kind of supposed to live.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with the idea of pets often.
Yeah.
We have a guinea pig right now.
Oh, wow.
Andrea's guinea pig named Mose.
Yeah.
And but that one makes a little more sense to me because
Uh-huh.
he's really pretty happy in his little
Yeah.
cage. He really doesn't need much.
Right.
He just eats hay all day and poops.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all they do. But you know, I think I'd feel a huge responsibility if I had a pet to let them live the life that I think is close to what they might want.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
and especially if it was a dog, it'd be like, I really need to work hard to make sure this dog gets, because dogs want a territory.
Yeah.
They do want to be with humans, I think. I think
Mhm.
that's in them. But they also need a ton of outside time.
Yeah.
And they need their space too, and they need to feel like they have a purpose, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of work. I think it's almost the same responsibility as having a kid. I'm not quite the same,
Yeah.
but I guess, you know, but in ways
No,
it's like
pretty
I want
much,
them to
yeah.
have the life they're kind of supposed to. So
Yeah.
I think it's great your cats go inside and
Yeah.
outside.
I mean, at this moment, she's always supervised.
Yeah, well, she, you know, as cats face the dangers that they're supposed to face, how is that our job to like stop them from that? Like,
Yeah.
cats are probably supposed to have run-ins with
They're
coyotes.
supposed to learn.
They're
Yeah.
supposed to learn
Mhm.
when to not do that, you know. And if you keep them inside all the time, I think that probably the thing is when people switch what they expect animals to do. So like an indoor cat, their entire life, all of a sudden is like, here you go outside and gets hit
Yeah.
by a car. You
Right.
know?
Yeah, because they don't know.
They don't know.
Mhm.
They don't know.
Same thing with kids, I would imagine.
Yeah.
'Cause, you know, if you coddle them and protect them from life, when life happens, they're not going to be prepared.
Yeah.
You know, they won't have their own understanding of, you know, how to get out of this, how to fix it.
100%. 100%.
Like my parents never coddled me, and you know, I really appreciate it now because I'm pretty self-sufficient. You know,
Right.
if something happens, I don't freak out about it. I don't get upset. I figure out plan B. You
Yeah.
know, what's plan B? All right. You know, I really am stuck. Who can I call?
Yeah, I had the same thing. My parents were very good at riding the line between comfort and hardship,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I think that would be the hardest thing about being a parent. It's like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
now you have to decide, like,
Mhm.
how much comfort to give your kid that you've
Mhm.
worked for, that they can have the toys and games and
Right.
things and lifestyle. And then, but also, like, do you want them to go to the really good school with all the rich kids, or should they go to the kind of shitty school where they get in fights sometimes? I don't
Yeah.
know. There's
Right.
kind of both
Mhm.
sides of that.
Yeah. I'd probably let my kids go to the shitty school.
But how
And
shitty?
supplement
The ones where
their-
there's gangs
yeah,
and guns?
That's true.
Because they can get some of these schools. I can't
Mhm.
imagine what some schools are really like. I can't
Yeah.
imagine that I would even be able to define it as a school compared to what I grew up with.
Right.
Because there's schools with like full blown gangs.
That's true.
You
We
know,
never really had gangs at my school
Like,
either.
do you send your kid to prison? Because you know, prison would be, you know, that would they'd
About-
learn a lot
yeah.
there about hardship too.
Sure.
You know, I don't know.
Hmm.
It's not supposed to
It
be
is
like that.
hard,
It's supposed to
yeah.
be hard enough. But it's some of those schools are rough,
I know.
and some are way too comfy and cushy. And I
Yeah,
met a lot of those
right.
people in college, and I was like, oh, you don't know.
Oh, for
anything,
sure.
do
I
you?"
met a lot in grad school.
Yeah. You never faced any problems, did you? And you still have the credit card, and you can still call, and someone will bail you out immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Woof. Ouch.
I know.
Okay, this took a very strange turn.
It did.
But I think that's probably where we should wrap it.
Cool.
somehow.
Yeah.
Talking about, well, it is related, and here's
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you why. Because jiu-jitsu is the exact same thing. It is humans looking for a place where we can face hardship
Yeah.
in a controlled environment, somewhere right on the line between this sucks and I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we all need to be finding for ourselves. I think I
It
talked
builds
with
resilience.
Yeah.
That's what it is, and it's in a controlled environment, so you never will completely be unsafe, but you will be in some pretty shitty situations, and you will have to get out of them of your own knowledge and volition, rather than being saved by anything.
right, and you
know?
experience it there, so that when you experience something in the street, it's totally different,
Oh yeah.
and you
Mhm.
have a basis to go back to because you don't want to be helpless.
Mm-hmm.
I talked with Anthony about this too, but the idea that we don't have proving grounds as a society in the same way anymore.
Yeah.
There's no gauntlet to walk through
Mhm.
to be considered a full member of society or not. And I think that can be damaging. At the same time, I don't think it's anybody's decision what that should be.
No.
I think it's everybody's responsibility as a human to go find it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go find what the hard thing is for you, and you need to go do it.
Yeah.
And then you can contribute and be a good human being.
Right.
So.
And for sure, I think there's way too many people in today's world that avoid hardship, avoid that hard thing that they need to do, and then, you know, they're shitty people, you know, usually. Not all the time, but like I think it does build. We talk about building character, but it does. It truly does. If you have to struggle, if you know what it's like to live on the floor or to eat shitty food or to, you know, have to push this 200-pound sweating hairy guy off of you because, you know, you're freaking out over your lack of oxygen, like that's builds character. You know, I never have to worry about when I take that thought process when I'm in jiu-jitsu and I'm in a bad spot. I can't freak out because then, you know, things will get worse and I'll have to tap.
Yeah.
I have to find a good spot. I have to think. I have to protect myself, and then I have to advance to a better spot. You know, and that's what I bring to life. Is when I'm in a bad spot, I don't freak out. I know freaking out is useless. It's only gonna to get me in a worse spot. And so I think about what I can do. What are my options? How can I turn this around? And it's really, you know, jiu-jitsu's, they could say jiu-jitsu saves lives and it changes lives for sure. And I can't imagine where I would be without jiu-jitsu. I definitely wouldn't be a very centered person like I am, and I pride myself in being today. And I have no idea where I'll be, you know. Where would I would be without jiu-jitsu? I don't have no idea. Even, you know, I might have gotten in a lot of car crashes just without the ability to kind of like think of those options really quickly and act without, you know, freaking out about it.
Yeah. Being centered and capable, that's what's given to you.
Yeah.
And it gives that to, I think, a lot of people that do it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. What I love was that this conversation, because I didn't want there to be 3 jiu-jitsu podcasts from Tucson, but we went in a totally different direction.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of these has been completely unique.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy about that, especially as we're looking to finally head out from Tucson. You know, there's been some really unique things on the podcast here, and I appreciate that. So thank you for that. But some things have also been the same, which are those things that don't change, those values that are exactly where they are, and it's those truths that you find from having long conversations with people.
Sure.
You know. Well, thank you very much for hosting me once again.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So much better than our last episode.
Oh,
Good God.
Definitely.
Not that was bad, but just to be in person it's a whole different ballgame, and I appreciate it. So I think we're going to eat some steak sandwiches now.
I can't
sourdough
wait.
steak sandwiches.
I am so excited.
Yeah, I am too. I am too. Thank you everybody for listening. I think we got Track Farms back on the podcast now, so thanks to Track Farms for the sponsorship there and the excellent CBD. I think we'll be posting a little bit more about that soon, so stay tuned on that. Thanks to Heather for being here.
Yeah.
And
Thank
hosting
you for
us in
having
her
me.
house. Thanks to Tucson for being such a cool damn place. And as always, people, we will see you on the next episode.